Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2024 release, Lumberjack The Monster. It's a Takashi Miike film, so I was very excited to see that it had just, well, unceremoniously just been dropped on Netflix without telling anyone, with no promotion whatsoever. So really it just came down to word of mouth of people in the horror community online being like, hey, there's a new Miike film, let's check it out. So I was very excited because in the early 2000s, I was big into watching as much Miike as I could. I actually, back in my collection over here, own a lot of Miike DVDs. Still do. Bought tons. So anyway, let's talk about Lumberjack the Monster. Find out how this one is. Directed by Takashi Miike, who did, I'll just name a few of the films. He's done so many. Dead or Alive trilogy, Fudo, Shinjuku Triad Society, Ley Lines, The Great Yokai War, Izo, Deadly Outlaw Rekka, Sukiyaki Western Django, 13 Assassins, Imprint, Audition, and Ichi the Killer. Audition and Ichi the Killer probably being the most notorious films of his. So, and especially with those films, you have, and how he's typically done like violence and gore in his films, you have an idea of what will typically be in his types of films. Not really the case in this one. You get a little bit, but not enough, in my opinion. And I wonder how much of that was not him, but actually what Netflix wanted or what they made get cut out of it. But I don't know. This film was written by Hiroyoshi Koiwai, who wrote Game and Way to Find the Best Life, which I have not seen, as well as Mayusuke Kurai. This obviously, it's a Japanese film, so subtitles. Although I believe there was an option to do English. No, actually, there wasn't an option to do English dubs. There was another movie I watched that was foreign language in the same day. But yeah, Japanese film, so there will be subtitles. For people who can't handle subtitles, just know. And it is like almost a 2-hour film, which honestly I think the biggest problem with this movie is that it is so long and the pacing is really bad, unfortunately, and that kills a lot of the film for me. I still liked it. I'm still glad I saw it. But this could have been a really, really, really good film had it been cut down a bunch and just been a little more succinct. Because you do lose tons of flow to the film by having it drawn out as much as it is. But that's also kind of typical for a Miike film. There's a lot of that. And there's a lot of Japanese film that I've seen in my time that is that way as well. It's kind of always been a lot more long form. Anyway, quick synopsis. It is basically about these police officers who are investigating a string of murders that they are finding a certain MO with and thinking there's something going on with who's being targeted for these murders. And it's all about kind of investigating it, trying to get to the bottom of it and figuring out what's going on. And it's kind of like there's, I don't know, at a certain point in the film, it seems like there's kind of two mysteries at play with the film, and you kind of are like, well, how do these things relate, or are they going to basically stay separate and we're just kind of solving like two mysteries in the movie? So, you know, it's interesting. They definitely keep you engaged in it, but like I said, you know, the pacing isn't great. The opening scene is pretty messed up, and it really does a great job of kind of setting a tone to get you very interested and be like, wow, this can be a really screwed up movie. And story-wise, it is, but I just don't think the film goes as hard as it should have gone, especially for being a Miike film. When you've seen a lot of Miike films and you know what he typically does, although, you know, he does do a lot of forays into other things, like Great Yokai War was like a kid's movie, basically. So he does kind of stray from what his, you know, meat and potatoes typically are, which is like extreme violence, extreme gore. But I was just found myself really wanting that, and it just wasn't that. And once again, like I said, I wonder how much of that was Netflix being like, we need to tone this stuff down. We can't go too over the top. Because if people remember, his film Imprint that he did for Masters of Horror never even aired in the United States. And that was for, what was that, for Showtime, I think it was for, and they wouldn't even air it. And they were like a premium service. Kind of ridiculous because his was just, it was too much. It was too over the top. But But the beginning has this really messed up setup. And it kind of gets a little bit less messed up after that, you know, scenes wise. That's probably like the most intense messed up scene in the film, in my opinion. But it's all kind of tied to that scene, obviously. Not surprisingly, it is quite well shot. I mean, Miike's been at this for a very long time. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's a great director. He's great at directing his cinematography in his films. And at one point, I believe I read that he was making like 7 films a year. He would just pump it out, which is an interesting thing about him. Is he, in interviews, had kind of said that he any given day, the film's going to come out differently because he's more of like a fly by the seat of your pants and just kind of like come up with the shots and the directing on the spot. Whereas it's very interesting because he was one of my favorite directors, and also at the same time, Chan-wook Park, who from South Korea and did amazing films like Old Boy and the whole Vengeance trilogy was one of my favorites, but he is the opposite situation where he was very, very meticulous about everything he puts in a scene and how it's shot and the color palette and like all that stuff. Miike's more like, we're just busting out movies, but he's still doing a great job. So anyway, looks great. There's a pretty mysterious aspect added in that I did not see coming. So with the opening scene, you have an idea of what they're trying to go for. And then there's something else that comes in that seems like, okay, like I was saying before, like, is this going to be related, or are we solving 2 mysteries? So that's just an extra bit of intrigue to it, which I didn't see that coming. I was kind of like, oh, okay, this is kind of an interesting thing. I'm interested to see if this actually, like, fits in with the story, or we're just kind of doing 2 stories. A lot of characters are kind of emotionless, but that is intentional. That is intentional, that kind of like emotionless aspect. Unfortunately, that is hard to have people then connect with those characters, so there is that issue of not really being able to connect with anyone because there's a big focus on those more emotionless characters, and the other characters who do show emotion, they're not main characters. Like, you don't get a whole lot from them, so you're not really connecting with much of anyone, unfortunately. Maybe by the end you do make some connections kind of retroactively. You'll know what I mean if you've seen it, but I don't know. It's just, I know what they were going for and I respect it, but at the same time, like, it's hard because it kind of divorces the audience a little bit from the material while they're watching it. There's some good gore in this, including arterial spray, but it's, for the most part, extremely restrained for what Miike does. There's one moment of just, like, old school Miike arterial spray that's just over the top and ridiculous, and it's something that was done in Japanese films for quite some time in the early 2000s, maybe, actually, I think in the 90s as well. I don't know if it's still going on. I haven't seen enough Japanese cinema recently, but yeah, so there's some good gore, but not nearly as much as I expected or wanted, unfortunately. The progression of police work is done at a pretty good pace, but the film really slows down as it gets closer to the ending. A very unfortunate thing, because I was talking about, you know, the pacing's not great for this, and it's even worse when the pacing starts getting worse as the film gets closer to the end. Because really what you want is for it to start a little bit slower and then start to pick up, and really get going to kind of like a fevered pitch for the end of the film. And that just doesn't happen here, unfortunately. There is a fairy tale that's worked into the movie, and I really do like how they work the fairy tale in. It's at the core of the actual story, and the core of the story is really interesting and really cool. And like I said, if this was tightened up more and the pacing was really fixed, this could have been an awesome film, but the pacing really kills it. It's just not great. There are some moments where the score drops out suddenly and in a very odd way. Like, when you're going to drop the score, it's really good to kind of like start slowly taking the volume of it down, like, you know, just kind of slowly taper it off, or to stop the music at a point that seems like it's done, or it's a good break in the song. This, 2 times in the film, it doesn't do that. It's like mid-song where it feels like an inappropriate place, and it just drops it. and it's very jarring, it's very sudden, and it is very odd, and it takes you out of the film experience because it seems like a mistake. So I don't really know what was going on with that. Ultimately, the pacing is pretty bad. There's a good story, but the pacing just kills a lot of the impact. Even the ending is really drawn out, unfortunately. The dialogue is really well written. It's pretty well acted, but the pacing, it just kills so much. And when you're just drawing out so many scenes, the impact of what's going on just really fades because it seems like they're trying to over-explain things to you, trying to treat you like you're kind of stupid, and that really sucks. So I'm going to give my rating right now, and then I'm going to say something thematically for anyone who doesn't want to know that, because people can view that as spoiler for the film. So out of 5 stars, half stars, and play. Unfortunately, I'm giving it a 3-star rating. I still enjoyed it. I'm still very much glad I saw it because the story is really good, and there are some great aspects to it, but it could have been so much more. So 3 stars for Lumberjack the Monster. Do all the things, though. Subscribe to my channel. Help me out with that. That's your best way to support me. Also hitting the thumbs up on videos like this to help me with that YouTube algorithm, and hitting the notification bell button. So now I'm going to talk about the thematic stuff with the film. There's only one bullet point I have for this. So if anyone wants to log off, do it now. Ultimately, this is about how adults shape children and how those children will wonder what could have been if their lives don't turn out the way that they wanted them to. It's all about kind of, I think it's a little bit of that kind of like nature versus nurture situation that ends up coming up. Yeah, it goes very kind of deeper into the whole, this is how a person's life can be impacted by what older people do and what they impose on children and stuff like that. So it's interesting. I don't actually, there's some other things I could say about it, but I just don't want to ruin anything for anyone who wants to see it, because like I said, 3 stars, like I still enjoyed it, and I'm sure there are plenty of people who will still check it out. But anyway, those are my thoughts on Lumberjack the Monster. Down to talk about it, go ahead and put it in the comments. Thank you very much for taking your time to watch this, and until next time, keep it brutal.